This is the story of Thera Radha. He was once a poor old Brahmin. Radha stayed at the Jetavana monastery. He did small services for the bhikkhus. In return, he received food, clothing, and other needs. Despite his desire, he wasn't encouraged to join the order. One morning, the Buddha saw Radha in his vision. He knew Radha was ready for arahatship. The Buddha learned the bhikkhus didn't want Radha to join. He called the bhikkhus and asked if anyone remembered a good deed by Radha. Venerable Sariputta recalled a spoonful of rice given by Radha. The Buddha asked Sariputta to help Radha. Sariputta agreed and admitted Radha to the order. Radha followed Sariputta's guidance strictly. Within days, Radha attained arahatship. The Buddha praised Radha's amenability to guidance. He taught that one should follow a wise man who rebukes faults. It is like following a guide to buried treasure. The Buddha once stayed at the Jetavana monastery. He observed the actions of two bhikkhus, Assaji and Punabbasuka. These bhikkhus, along with their 500 disciples, lived in Kitagiri village. They violated the fundamental precepts by planting flowering plants and fruit trees for gain. This misconduct troubled the Buddha. The Buddha sent his chief disciples, Sariputta and Mahamoggallana, to address the issue. He instructed them to stop the bhikkhus from further misconduct. The Buddha emphasized the importance of maintaining the faith and generosity of lay disciples. He said, "Only fools dislike good advice and being forbidden to do evil." The Buddha then recited a verse. "Admonish others, give advice, and prevent wrong. Such a man is dear to the good and disliked by the bad." This wisdom remains timeless. The story of Thera Channa is a tale of transformation and redemption. Channa was the attendant who accompanied Prince Siddhartha when he renounced the world. He later became a bhikkhu when the prince attained Buddhahood. As a bhikkhu, Channa was arrogant and overbearing. He often boasted about his close connection to the Buddha. He taunted the chief disciples, Sariputta and Moggallana, claiming superiority. The Buddha admonished Channa multiple times for his behavior. He advised Channa to associate with good friends and noble people. Despite this, Channa continued his abusive behavior. Before his parinibbana, the Buddha instructed Thera Ananda to impose the Brahma punishment on Channa. After the Buddha's demise, Channa felt deep remorse and changed his ways. He soon attained arahatship. This is the story of Thera Mahakappina. He was once the king of Kukudavati. One day, while in the park with his ministers, he met merchants from Savatthi. They spoke of the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. Inspired, the king and his ministers set out for Savatthi. The Buddha, seeing their journey, went to meet them. He waited under a banyan tree by the river Kandabhaga. When the king and his ministers arrived, they saw the Buddha radiating 6-colored rays. They paid homage to him. The Buddha delivered a discourse. The king and his ministers attained Sotapadhi fruition. They asked to join the order, and the Buddha accepted them as bhikkhus. Queen Anoja, learning of the king's departure, followed with the ministers' wives. They too met the Buddha and attained Sotapadhi fruition. They joined the order of bhikkhunis and soon attained arahatship. The story of Samanera Pandita is a tale of wisdom and determination. Pandita, a young son of a rich man in Savatthi, became a Samanera at 7. One day, he saw farmers channeling water into their fields. He asked Thera Sariputta, "Can water which has no consciousness be guided to wherever one wishes?" The Thera replied, "Yes, it can be guided." Pandita then saw fletchers straightening arrows and carpenters shaping timber. He thought, "If water, arrows, and timber can be guided and shaped, why can't I tame my mind?" Inspired, he asked for permission to return to the monastery. Pandita diligently practiced meditation, contemplating the body. Saka and the Devas kept the monastery quiet to aid his meditation. Before mealtime, Pandita attained anagami fruition. The Buddha saw this and stopped Sariputta from entering Pandita's room. While they conversed, Pandita attained arahatship. The Buddha then said, "The wise tame themselves, just as farmers channel water and carpenters shape timber." Let me tell you the story of Thera Lakundaka Bhaddiya. Bhaddiya was a bhikkhu at the Jetavana monastery. Due to his short stature, he was called Lakundaka, meaning the dwarf. Despite his size, Bhaddiya was known for his good nature. Young bhikkhus often teased him by pulling his nose or ears. They would pat his head and ask, "Uncle, are you happy?" Bhaddiya never got angry or retaliated. He remained calm and patient. When the Buddha heard about Bhaddiya's patience, he said, "An arahat never loses his temper. He is like a mountain of solid rock, unshaken by wind." The Buddha then spoke a verse. "As a mountain of rock is unshaken by wind, So also, the wise are unperturbed by blame or by praise. Once at the Jetavana monastery, the Buddha shared a story about Kanamata. Kanamata was a devoted disciple. Her daughter Kanna was married and lived in another village. Kanna visited her mother. Her husband sent a message for her to return. Kanamata wanted to send sweetmeats with Kanna. Bhikkhus came for alms, and Kanamata gave them the sweetmeats. This happened for 3 days. Kanna couldn't return home. Her husband took another wife. Kanna became bitter towards the bhikkhus. She abused them, and they avoided Kanamata's house. The Buddha visited Kanamata. He asked Kanna if the bhikkhus took what was given. Kanna admitted her fault. She paid homage to the Buddha and attained Sotapaddy fruition. King Pasenadi made Kanna rich. Kanna gave generously to the bhikkhus. The Buddha said, "The wise, after listening to the Dhamma, become serene." The Buddha once stayed at Varanja with 500 bhikkhus. They faced many hardships there. A famine struck Varanja. The people could offer very little to the bhikkhus. Despite this, the bhikkhus remained content. They survived on small amounts of shriveled grain from horse traders. After the Vasa, the Buddha and the bhikkhus returned to Jetavana. The people of Savatthi welcomed them with choice food. Some people living with the bhikkhus ate greedily and caused a nuisance. They were well behaved during the famine, but became unruly with abundance. The Buddha said, "Fools are sorrowful in hardship and elated in good times. The wise remain steady through life's ups and downs." This is the story of Thera Dhammika. He lived in Savatthi with his wife. Dhammika wanted to become a bhikkhu. His wife asked him to wait until their child was born. After the birth, she asked him to wait until the child could walk. Dhammika decided to seek liberation on his own. He left home to become a bhikkhu. Dhammika took a meditation subject from the Buddha. He practiced diligently. Soon he became an arahat. Years later, he visited his family to teach them the Dhamma. His son joined the order and also attained arahatship. His wife then became a bhikkhuni and attained arahatship too. The whole family found liberation. The Buddha praised Dhammika's wisdom and virtue. He emphasized living according to the Dhamma. The Buddha once resided at the Jetavana monastery. He shared profound wisdom with a congregation in Savatthi. One night, people from Savatthi made special offerings to the bhikkhus. They arranged for discourses to be delivered throughout the night. Many in the audience couldn't stay awake. They returned home early. Some stayed but were drowsy and half asleep. Only a few listened attentively. At dawn, the bhikkhus reported the night's events to the Buddha. He reflected, "Most people are attached to this world. Only a few reach the other shore, Nibbana." The Buddha then spoke these verses. "Few among men reach the other shore. All others run up and down on this shore. But those who practice well will reach Nibbana, crossing the difficult realm of death." The Buddha resided at the Jetavana monastery. 500 bhikkhus came to pay homage after spending the Vasa in Kosala. The Buddha shared 3 verses to suit their temperaments. He spoke of wisdom, detachment, and Nibbana. He said, "Leave the home of craving. Seek solitude and Nibbana. Give up dark ways and cultivate good ones." He added, "Develop the 7 factors of enlightenment. Rejoice in abandoning attachment. Realize Nibbana in this world."